We have a work study session that starts at 7, and we just kind of wanted to have an interactive session about the Code City discussion that we've been having. It's been on the council's agenda probably 4 times at least. At the last council meeting, we said we wanted to do this session, and we'll field questions and concerns. And I wanted to recap for the last 2+ weeks. The beauty of our new website is it allows us to push stuff out via Facebook. We've got an email distribution list we've been pushing out, and we've done at least 3 press releases related to this, asking for feedback on a survey. So the survey, we've had 146 people respond. We were a bit concerned, slightly, that, maybe individuals would vote multiple times. We have looked at that. We only have 1 IP address that voted 3 times, and we've got a handful of IP addresses that voted twice. And in many cases, those IP addresses canceled each other out. Like we had 2 spouses in a household, and one voted one way and another. So those are kind of some assumptions we're making that from that. So with that, there's a board there that has some MSRC data on it that's on the website also. There's also a Code City handbook. I've got a few copies up here. If anybody hasn't seen this, it's on the webpage. I'd gladly hand them out if somebody wanted them. And then, you bet. And this is a reference document put out by Municipal Research. Has put this out. This isn't a study document, and it just talks about pros and cons of the Code City. And really, so one, I'll get to the survey results were, like I said, we had 146 people participate in the survey. We also had a question box. I put those answers in the council members' mailboxes, and then we'll put those on the website probably tomorrow. And so the first question was, do you favor becoming a non-charter Code City? And 80% of the respondents said yes. 20% said no. The next question, should the authorization for a non-charter Code City be made by a vote of the council or placed on the ballot, and the cost for that ballot measure is $12,000. We had 58% of the respondents say that it should be done councilmatically, and 42% said by ballot. And then we had multiple comments that we'll publish. So recapping, really where we're at with this is it's about, in my mind, it's about home rule. And us, if you, as a second-class city, we're one of 6 remaining second-class cities. Those state statutes were written in the 1800s. Last updates to that were in the 1960s. If we go to, it's not that we can't do a development agreement. It's not that we can't pursue code enforcement on a derelict building. It's when we end up in the court of law before the judge, he's going to look at where is your authority to take this action. And as a second-class city, it's not called out in state law. As a Code City, the judge is going to look to our code. And if our code says we can do it, and it isn't in violation of state law, then we're most likely to prevail. And so the discussion to this point, and I don't have a vote on this matter. We're going to have it on the 28th. There'll be the resolution that'll be brought forward with 2 different action points. One would be to take it to a ballot, and one would be the council taking action from that point. Tonight isn't for the council's deliberation. It's to hear from you folks and to talk about this measure. Our plan is, and I haven't heard anything different than this, is to take our code as it exists today, to bring it forward and as a Code City. And then there are a multitude of options that we can choose to enact. or to modify our code, and we will take those up individually. And, with public process, no different than what we're starting tonight with the fire code. We've got the fire department here tonight. They're going to want to talk to us about the fire. They've got a proposal about the fire code. From there, the council could defer it to a committee. It could go to the planning commission. Could go to a work group. So I don't see any of the other actions we're going to take related to being a code city being done any differently. So with that, any of the council members want to speak to the issue before I take the microphone to the public?
I would just say I appreciate when you're testifying tonight. I appreciate it. If there's any really specific examples of things that you like or don't like, I think that's very meaningful to me. I've talked to a lot of people about this over the last few weeks, and what I try to avoid are just general ambiguities. People think, well, if you're a second-class city, that it's X, or if you're a code city, it's X, and I'm not sure that people really understand it, have really read all about it. And so for those of you that may have dug in a little deeper in their specific instances, I'd love to hear about that.
Okay. Other council members before Mr. Diener, come on in. So just to catch you up, I've unveiled our survey results, and as of this afternoon at 2 o'clock, 80% of the respondents to our survey believe that we should become a non-charter code city, and 58% believe that it should be done councilmatically. So with that, I open it up to the floor. Questions, concerns? Jerry?
I was wondering about the referendum and initiative. I would like to see it just start with having that initially and not have to have it go to a vote by the people. It would make me feel more comfortable. So that's one thing that I'm concerned about. If over, I don't remember what it was, but it was close to 50% of the communities put it in afterwards, so why not do it right away? It would give me a better, more comfortable feeling.
All right, thank you. Others?
My wife was unable to attend this evening, but she wants to make sure that she... Oh, Nick Whittleton. My wife was unable to attend this evening, so she wrote me a little note, so it counts. Since it is possible for council to enact the option of citizen initiative and referendum under Code City, I would like to know if it is the council's intention to exercise this option. For myself, it is imperative to know this information in order to choose whether I support this change to city government. Thank you, sincerely, Alyssa Whittleton. And I agree 100% with that. And one concern I have is that over the last 2 years, we have a legislative person that talks on behalf of the city down in Olympia, and this item has not come up. Other items have come up that interfere with the citizens' ability, like the public records request. That's popped up twice, but nothing about changing the last 6 cities over to code cities. That's just curious to me.
I guess I can probably address the last piece. I mean, I can't speak for the legislature as a whole, but when there's only 6 of us, we're not a very loud voice, for change to that. The legislature has given us a remedy to, and a vehicle. I'm not sure when the ability to become a code cities, but I believe it's been around. It was 62. I think I think Paulsbo became one in the 50s, according to Mayor Erickson when I was, yeah. So does anybody, the initiative and referendum, does anybody want to tackle that or?
We as a group have not talked about that. What I'm remembering, council, to have had the discussion is we know that there are a variety of things that we could add to our code, and the initiative or the referendum initiative is part of that. And what we had decided was that we would not make any changes to our code initially, and that we would address those just as you had indicated, Mayor, when you started, and there would be a public process for any, additions we would make to our code. But we have not, as a group, discussed the initiative at all.
Any differing opinions to that? I know we're not here to debate, your deliberations, I believe, will start next Tuesday. But others that have a question, concern, comment? Okay.
I'd like to add on to what Beck said about initiative and referendum because it's something that has puzzled me. I like the idea of both the representative democracy but also getting people involved. But one thing that we haven't gotten into is like the cost of initiative and a referendum. For example, how many people would have to petition? I don't know the numbers. I don't know if it's a percentage of the last 10%. So it's 10% would have to fill a petition for 10% of the last who voted in the last general election, or? Okay, so let's say it's at least 300, and there's nothing wrong with listening to the 300 people who have signed something that they believe passionately in, but if we're talking about the cost of one measure costing $12,000, and then you think
we end up on a November election.
for example, but for that ballot measure, then you wonder, like, well, what would the cost of each initiative, successful initiative, which would become a referendum? Would it be a similar cost on the ballot? Would it be more or less depending on the timing? So this is something that I don't believe council has talked about, but I've wondered about. And one thing, there's an article, I wish I could cite it. I could tell you it was in the New York Times. It raised the idea that initiative and referendum can be very expensive, and it may not be the ideal form of government sometimes because you may not have everyone. This is going to sound undemocratic, but this is my understanding of the article. You may have people voting on something that's more emotional that without getting all the facts in. This may or may happen. It may not. It may be something that can be reversed, but it's something to consider when you're talking about a city with a finite budget. So I think this is something we haven't really talked about, and we would be hesitant to know what it is without the cost. How much is it going to cost? Is there a limit to the number of referendums you could have in a year? I'd want to know these kinds of answers.
So I think that comes back to what Beck had said was what we're hearing is we're going to bring our code. The plan is to bring our code forward as it stands and take up initiative, referendum, or other issues case by case over time and take it off in bite-sized pieces. As we've seen that our code development, we thought we were going to do that overnight too, and we're about a year and a half into it. So, government moves quickly sometimes. So, Mr. Anderson, others? You have
I want to comment about what Fred had to say about initiative. Initiative form of government to me seems like just a little better form of government because you do get a passionate group of people that have to get together to put the idea forward initially, and then they got to sell the idea to the population. And that's probably not going to happen unless it's something they're very passionate about, because it takes quite a bit to get 300 people together to sign a petition and put together an initiative. To me, that sounds like the right way to do it, because then it's government that the people are getting involved in, and then you let the rest of it take its course. So I think the Code City form of government to me is just recognizing that we're growing up, and originally the state sort of restricted the rules for cities, or restricted what the cities could do, because I suppose they didn't think that they needed to make some decisions. And the example in the rule book cited where one city, I think it was, can't remember the name of it, wanted to build a dam to supply their city. And under the home rule form of government, they had the right to do that, and the legislature couldn't stop them, so they were able to take care of their own community as they saw fit, where if they weren't a code city, they would not have the authority to do that. So it's sort of stepping out of your comfort zone, taking on a grown-up position and taking charge of your own city. Personally, I like that idea.
Others? We want to hear from you. Mr. Mathis.
You know, I'd like to try to answer Fred that I wouldn't worry so much about that because there's not an awful lot of times that I've heard about initiative referendum being used by any code city. We can easily go to the various people that know a lot more than you and I do about it and get you statistics. But I'd be surprised in a 5-year period if one out of maybe 2 or 3 dozen has an initiative or referendum. Because like you said, first you have to get that 10%, then you have to convince 51% and go through the election process. So it's got to be a fairly significant disagreement between the legislators of the community and the citizens before it ever gets to that point. But I like the idea of having that ability. It's a stopgap, and it's a way for the citizen to be involved. So I'm for that, but I'm also very much in favor of if we end up being a code city in wards. And I don't like the state calling them wards. I think districts are a better example, but in the MSRC or MRSC manual, it calls them wards, and I think the RCW calls them wards. So we should call them wards, so it's what they are. But districts, very important, I think, for young cities. We're not necessarily a young city, we're 125 years old, but growing cities should have district representation, I believe. Because at one point, now I think we have I was going to do a map, and I just didn't have time to put a bunch of push pins in a map. But just until this last election, we had like 6 of the 7 council people within about a 10-block radius. That's not very representative of the community. And so that's an advantage that's coming with a code city if it goes that way, if you decide that way. I think district and wards are a no-brainer. I think they need to be considered.
Thank you.
We have that right as a second-class city.
I believe it was Councilmember Olin that initially brought that up probably 6-8 years ago, and didn't get a lot of traction. Mr. Mathis is correct. I think it was just before the McCormick annexation, or even shortly thereafter, we had, all but maybe one of our council members living virtually downtown, and we've got. Fortunately, we had Mr. Cartwright from McCormick Woods serving, and we got Mr. Kachardi now, and Councilmember Diener actually lives, he's got a drive here, actually. Many of us can walk, so. Others want to address wards or districts?
Just to follow up on that, in the general election, the entire city votes, right? It's just
Correct. No, in Bremerton, you can only, your district or ward can only vote.
It's only the mayor's elected in Bremerton, it's not the entire city votes on it.
Yeah, that is my understanding also. Others? Different issue? You want to?
Yeah. Of those who are in attendance tonight, first of all, I'd like to thank you for coming out, but I'd also like to hear if anybody has any downsides they'd like to share with moving to a non-charter code city.
Have any concern? We've heard some, I guess, bells and whistles. We'd like to see part of it. Yes.
It's not really a downside, but I guess I would like to have it explained again about coming into the city as the differences between the way it is now and the way it would be as a code city. If an area wants to become a part of the city.
Annexation. Okay, so we have, to my knowledge, and Mr. Clausen's been around a lot longer than I have on this issue, it has our annexations have been done by a petition method where the property owners petition the city and ask it to be brought into the city. There is, as a code city, there is an alternative method to that, which is putting it on the back, you know, the city, so how we've done the majority of all of the annexations that I'm aware of is the property owners of a geographic area has petitioned the city. They come to the city and say, we'd like to become part of the city, okay? There is an alternative method where the city pursues that annexation, okay? And it's done through a petition, and there's a threshold for that petition, and it's put on the ballot for the citizens to vote on whether we annex that area. And the threshold for the number of signatories on that petition is lowered. And Sharon, help me here. I think it's 20 or 25% lowers to 10, but okay. So that was from memory there. But we've never seen that method utilized here in the city. And just because a petition is generated at that lower threshold, it's still put on the ballot for everyone to vote on if that method was used.
Okay, my question was, say that, let's use the homes that are just off of London past Jackson, and they're not in the city limits, at least on the right-hand side, Parkwood in that area, are they? Okay, say that the city decided that they wanted them inside the city limits, so the city can get, is it just 10%? I was told it's just 10% of the people living in that area get to vote, but the way I had you guys explain here, it was everybody in the city
That's
gets to make that decision.
correct.
So
If
people lose that right to make that decision compared to the way we've been doing it.
it's a different methodology than the way we've been doing it. We've really relied on folks coming to the city and saying, we want, you know, in theory, you get better police protection, you get a higher service level, and so it has been, or you know, different development standards from the county to the city if you've got raw land or land you're wanting to redevelop. So we've really relied on those property owners in an area to say, hey, I want to be part of the city. And it's just a different method that's currently available. It's just the petition threshold is reduced from 20% to 10%.
Well, that's what I thought, and I put it on South Gazette Politics, and I was told that I was wrong. And I even read most of this and went to the RCW.
My understanding, I think you're right, Jerry. And I had the attorney back there shaking her head.
Same threshold as the initiative referendum.
Yes, we're just lowering the threshold is all it's doing for the petition, number of petition.
The whole community gets to make the decision, whereas before,
Yeah.
it was say the people in McCormick, they made the decision that they wanted to come in.
Well, they petitioned the city council, and then the city council held public hearing on it. Yeah.
Still, it kind of came down to where they were the drivers of the car.
Yes.
In the future, it could be somebody else driving the car, and they could be brought in even without all of them wanting it.
So,
Today, just a different threshold.
and here's
It's the same, it's just the percentages,
a subtlety.
community or a segment of the community can petition to annex, and if they have sufficient amount of assessed valuation, then that petition comes to the council, and the council makes a decision and goes forward.
Yeah.
The election method is a little different process, and you're right, at least in my tenure on the council, we've never held an election for annexation, it's all been by petition.
Remember, any place that could annex into the city has to be part of what's called our urban growth area. And the county went through a very exhaustive process. Gosh, the last one was, no. The process to expand the UGA was, gosh, 12 or more years ago. And so they went through, so those people that are in the UGA had a voice whether or not, so it is really the intent of the Growth Management Act that we are supposed to make those areas that are, you know, in the urban growth area part of the city at some point. So it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody if they ended up on a ballot measure, or, I know we've gotten kind of in the weeds on a side issue here. Fred?
I had a quick question, which probably you guys or maybe the attorney can answer, which is from what I'm hearing is traditionally it has been the property owners driving the annexation into the city. But it sounds like it's possible that there's an additional annexation method which would involve voters who may not be property owners.
Which is available today. Yes. That method is available to.
So it's currently available whether or not we're, okay. It's just that has never happened. Okay.
Mr. Anderson?
You're asking us if we have any concerns about the Code City form of government. Do you guys have any concerns, or what issues are maybe keeping you on the fence about it, or maybe just something you're going to be careful about if this is if you vote for this?
Mr. Diener?
I'll take the first stab at this. Beck did a good discussion about having an old dishwasher and not finding the parts for that anymore. I'll give you perhaps a more realistic example, which is when jurisdictions around us everywhere across the nation, look to make changes to their jurisdictions, they also look and see what's working well in other places. And they quite often copy those other models and then improve them. We can't do that. We don't have that luxury because our menu is so small with half a dozen cities. So we can do it, but we're limited in the ability to do it and what we can look at.
This morning, we had an opportunity to talk briefly with Mayor Erickson about the issue. And I can tell you personally, everything that I've seen and read about it, I don't see any downsides to it. But one of the things that she pointed out to us today, which was enlightening, was that Paulsville right now is having an issue with long-term parking in fire lanes. And they want to be able to raise the penalty for parking in a fire lane. They have the ability to do it. Whereas a second-class city, we're limited in how much we could charge, if you will, or set the fines for, because we're limited to what the state says we can do. So just in that one instance that she shared today, it was like, why can't we as a community make those decisions versus Mother May I to the legislature?
I agree that it seems to be mainly upside. I think the flexibility that it gives to the council has enough checks and balances that I wouldn't be too worried about what they could do to change it. What I'm struggling with is how do we get there? Sort of similar to how we went for a transportation benefit district. This is something that could be done councilmanically. It could also be something put on the ballot. And so depending who you talk to, a lot of people are saying the council should do it, save the 12,000. But others are saying that they want to have their chance to vote on it. So that's my only misgiving is how do we get there as opposed to, I think we should get there.
What Fred just said there just spoke to that. You know, of the respondents, 80% said, yeah, we should be doing this. The question is, it's much closer though, how we get there, you know, and what that process is. It would be a November ballot measure if it was put on the ballot. And gosh, Brandy, I think it was July. Yeah, I think so. It's sooner. Yes. If action, and the reason I'm pushing the council to take action, that ballot measure cost is the least expensive option is this coming November because we have council members up for election. It's significantly more if we have it a special election or, you know, an off-year election for that. So that is the least expensive alternative, is putting it this November, and that's why we have to take action to send it, we have to get it to the elections office up at the county, and we need, there's a time period that we have to comply with to make that happen. Yeah, so if there's also, if it was chosen, the council chose to take action, do this councilmanically, there's also they want to say it's a 90-day period that citizens could circulate a 10% petition and force it to the ballot. So we've worked backwards, is it 45? 45 days, thank you. We've worked backwards so that if a petition is circulated, that it still ends up on that November ballot, because we're just trying to be mindful of dollars and cents, that we don't want a $30,000 election if this can be done for $12,000. So, Mr. Anderson?
The survey is a little confusing to me because if you understand, the nature of a code city, it's giving more control to our leadership to manage our affairs for us, and we trust them. So the first question recognizes that, but the second one says that they want to have some say-so in the matter. I think if you understand a code city, we should be turning over the decision to our city council and our mayor.
The question was asked, is there any downsides that I'm concerned with? And, we've heard this from a number of people tonight. The discussions we've had as a council has just been centered around, should we move towards a code city? And that's where the conversation has stopped. And so if we were to do that, the next day, nothing has changed. Our code is exactly as it's been. And so from then, we look to the future, and if we want to address derelict buildings, or if we want to address, fire lanes, or if we want to address, then there's additional tools that we have access to, of which could provide pros, and they could provide cons. And so I think it's that process that we analyze each additional thing that we may want to amend and work through those pros and cons to make sure that we do it right. If we were to, just my opinion, if we were to take this initiative as moving to a code city and have all of these if-then statements to say, and we're going to include this at the same time in this and this and this and this and this, then I could see where the general constituent may be nervous about that. But I think by us wanting to take these one at a time and have the right public process to determine whether or not we would want to make any changes or amendments, to me gives me comfort, where I think there really isn't any downside risk. There's just opportunity moving forward.
This is just I came up when I was thinking about this, $12,000 for the November election. Did you check to see if there was more than one initiative? Would that number be less? It's my understanding that it's divided up among the different people that are sending this mailer out, or the number of people that are going to be using that ballot.
It was based on our last time we put a measure at the same time we had a council election. Clerk Reinerson based it on our prior experience. And it could be slightly more because we have more citizens. Yeah. Yeah, and it's a very, and they can give us only really an estimate and their best guess. We know that is the least, anytime we have a city council election, we're paying election costs, and we know that's our least expensive point in time, because we've got our citizens are voting on council elections. So every 2 years in a November is our least expensive opportunity. If we, conduct a special election like the school districts, I think theirs are running in the $30,000 range. It's a larger area. The fire district, I think you guys tend to run yours as a standalone, and they're more expensive. There's an opportunity to go in another November election. We just recognize this as our least expensive opportunity and work backwards from that date and built that number into the budget, because that was our prior experience, what it cost to put something on the ballot. It could be $1,000 more, or it could be $3,000 less. It's our best guess.
And they probably won't have an estimate until closer to May, when the deadline is to submit their resolution for a ballot measure for November.
Okay.
So when we spoke to them, I did reach out to the county. They had no idea. They don't know how many measures are coming up at the time that we did it, but.
Yeah. It's not a fix. It isn't a fixed number. If you didn't hear the clerk, it was best guess, and we wouldn't be able to get an exact number until May, when the election, data is more concrete. Yes.
I think one issue that kind of confused this whole thing several years back was a combination of initiative or something that was put on the ballot that confused the public regarding city manager and Code City. Had those two been separated, I pretty much believe that we would already be a Code City. And the more I have looked into it, it doesn't make any sense for us not to be a Code City. This city has the largest population of this last group of 6, and most of the other 5 are very small with very few resources, and it's mainly the reason they've never done anything about it. So with our size, where we're growing, and when you have it broken out, that our codes will really not be changing. There's less fear, and I think there was a huge fear factor in that last ballot measure that confused the public.
You're absolutely right. The last time we put this was married with a city manager proposal, and it failed very much so. And I think we heard from our citizens that we want a representative form of governance, and we want an elected mayor. That was very loud and clear in that. And that's what we're bringing forward is our code as it stands, our form of governance as it stands, and then, like as we spoke to, addressing those issues individually. And your other point there, we are larger than the other 5 cities combined. They're all in Eastern Washington. Some of them have populations of 800 to 1,000. So we're definitely in the minority there. Bobby.
Just a small question. Why have we not done this before? I just thought if it's so promising and something we need, I was just wondering about that. And also, just a quick, if you have 80% saying yes on the internet, which most people are on, I can't see why you would put it on the ballot myself, because if this room had 500 people in it, not wanting it, I could maybe see that. But when you have just a few people, the same few people that come to almost everything, just a question.
I can speak. So this is the 3rd time, to my knowledge, that we've debated this issue. One of the options in the code as a code city, it would be not to have a planning commission, and that isn't at all the dialogue we've had. And during the Coppola administration, we started this dialogue. We were traveling the path to, I believe, to take the council to take action. A petition was actually I believe we'd taken action, hadn't we, Mr. Clausen? And then a petition started to be circulated to put that on the ballot. The fatal flaw there is we were going to end up with a very expensive special election, and we went, whoa, wait a minute. We thought this was a no-brainer, and primarily the person that was concerned about that, in my personal opinion, was someone that was on our planning commission and had a concern that we were going to abolish the planning commission. And I don't think that was. I wasn't the mayor at that time. I was a council member. I don't believe that was to be true, but that was a concern. I haven't heard any dialogue at all of that. That's, I think our planning commission is a very vital function in our city. And the second time we took it to the ballot, but it was married with a change in our form of governance also, a city manager proposal. And so this is the 3rd time we've talked about it, and I think we've had some lessons learned there. When I started talking about it last year, I said, hey, I think this is something we should do. We need to put the money in the budget so we can afford to pay for it, because last time we hadn't done that. So all of a sudden we were going to have to have a special election, and we didn't put any money away for it. This time we've put money in the budget if we have to do it that way, because I think it's the right thing to do. And we'll see where the cards fall. Yes, ma'am.
So that 12,000, that doesn't include educating the public about what this, yeah, what does that, what do you get for 12 grand?
A ballot measure. And once, and so here's so once, well, no, but we can't. Once the council takes action to make this a ballot measure, we can't politic.
Well, you can.
We can provide information, but yes, it wouldn't be appropriate for us to be using city resources to persuade people one way or the other. Yeah. So, I think all of us share that. Yeah. And that's, I think, what we're doing. I think we've been extremely thorough in this process. We've been trying to get people to come and talk to us about this. Thankfully we have, I'm not a Facebook person, but our website does it for us. And so we've been pushing it out on Facebook. We've been pushing out to people that have signed up for our email. I've pushed it in multiple press releases. I know we've done at least 3 on this particular issue, about this survey, about this evening here tonight. So, gosh, I really appreciate everybody coming. Is there anything else that we can? Yes.
Comment about pushing it out and getting, this was 85, I heard the last time, 85 participants in this survey. Is that correct? 85 or 146? Well, Bobby, in answer to your question, that isn't a ballot. That's only a few people. There's a lot of people that aren't aware of this change coming at all, and that's the difference. When you said why not just go by this, because this is just a representative sampling. It's not a ballot. Yeah. So. And like you said, the people that are most interested, pro and con, are the ones that answered the survey. So the rest of the people out there probably have no idea either way about what's going on. So.
Well, they need to read
Well, just a couple comments. I agree this is a very small sample of the citizens of Port Arthur, but it certainly is an indication of what those who at least took the time to respond to the survey indicated. And even at 58%, that's pretty decent numbers for an indication of what the community is interested in. And I've been just kind of scanning some of the comments that came in from the surveys, and I just grabbed one page and went through. There's a number of comments that suggest, and I'll just read a couple. The City Council was elected to represent the community on substantial issues such as this and should make this decision without adding additional costs to the taxpayers. The City Council has been elected to make the decision. It seems that the management system with greater flexibility and efficiency is in the best interest of everyone. The cost to run an election is not needed. There are only upsides to being a non-charter code city. The City Council and Mayor have been voted in by the people to make the decision as our representatives that best serve the future of our city. There is no need to waste taxpayer dollars and create a ballot measure for this item. This is a decision that should simply be made by our City Council representative as it benefits the city. And granted, these are just samples, but if you can see my check marks, you can see what percentage of, at least on that page, are suggesting we just need to move forward. It's kind of a no-brainer. It makes all the sense in the world for the city. It's not going to change taxes. It's not going to change significantly, if at all, the rules for which we currently have within our city. It just seems like a waste of taxpayer dollars to put it on the ballot, and I guess that's my opinion.
I guess I'm going to check that there because I don't want the council deliberating here today. So.
I have a question, and Brandy can probably answer What are the number of people that would need to sign a petition? 10%. And what is 10% of what? Do we know what the what is? Do we know what that number is? Do we know what that number is? So we believe it's 270 are needed.
270.
Okay.
Yeah.
300. Okay.
And they need to be registered voters, living in the city, so on. Yeah, so valid signatures. That's right. So, anything else? We're gonna probably take a quick intermission here, and then we're gonna start our work study session here. And I would like to have a brief executive session with the council on a potential litigation matter, if I could. I know I didn't before, if I could, because we just got a few minutes. So thank you for everybody coming. You don't have to go. You're more than, this is riveting stuff we're here going to do. We're going to talk to the fire department about fire code. We've got actually a park planner coming. She's going to unveil some